Hey guys, welcome back. So, been a busy week. I ground down some of the seams on this, getting it ready for the new metal. But what I got to do today is address this hole sitting right here. This should be totally solid. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut out all the old stuff and make sure that I can get this all filled in with new metal, grind it down nice and flush, because this is where the quarter panel is going to be sitting in here, and we want to make sure that we get that nice and tight up against this unibody flange. So bear with me, we'll cut this out and we'll form up a new piece of metal, go in there. We've got a nice cut in there. There's a little spot up in the top here, but we'll try and fill that in with some weld. We'll put some back material in here. There's a couple little holes in here. Again, we'll just throw some material in behind, see if we can't fill these up with some weld. And then we'll cut a piece to fit this entire area. There's a little contour in here so it comes down and goes in. We'll just put a nice little bend on there on the workbench, and then we'll put a patch in. Hey guys, so here we are. I got a couple pieces of metal bent up. We got one here and the larger piece to fill in the big one. So I'm just going to take this and it'll go right in behind here, nice curvature, and we'll just fill in these two little holes, and that way nice and solid again. And then we'll take this part, we'll take this big plate. Luckily there's an opening on the back side that we can just slide it right in. Come in here, we'll clamp that in, and we'll just run some beads around the outside. So we'll set up the welder here and we'll get some stuff tacked in and make this nice and solid again. So now that we've got this all welded in, I'm going to take a nice sanding disc on my grinder. Okay, so it's a little bit flexible. We can get in there, we can clean up some of these welds, make sure it is nice and flush, and then we'll check to see if there's any spots. I think right here needs a little more. There was a little bit of a gap in here, so I had to fill the gap as I went. So yeah, we might have to tack that up some more in here, clean it up. But we got a patch. So after grinding this down, I think I'm pretty happy with it. More or less worried about the structural integrity of this. This is part of the unibody, so this is patched up. So what we'll do now, I'm going to squirt some primer on here, just make sure this is nice and protected, and then follow up a little bit of black paint. Just some primer, it seems to soak in the water, others doesn't. I'd rather put a nice coat of paint on there. If we get any paint on in here, this is where our new quarter panel is going to sit. So this is a main concern. I want to make sure this is clean metal so that the welds actually stick and it's nice and tight. In here as well is where the quarter panel is going to sit. So it's coming down here and running along this bottom rail. This is just in behind. This is more of a structural thing. So want to make sure that we got a good patch in here. So here we are, we got a coat of primer on here, nice thick coat in there. While I was at it, I thought, okay, why not throw some in here, make sure this is nice and protected as well. This ledge right here, so the little ledge with the spot welds on it, we'll clean that up afterwards so our spot welder can get in there nice, clean, make sure it's good structural connection. Like I say, this is a unibody. So with the unibody, you want to make sure that everything is nice and stapled together. Hey guys, so what I've done is ground out all them pieces. We've fixed the patch down here. We put some primer, we put some paint on there. It's looking good. We got some nice sturdy piece of material to work with. So what I've done so far is put the outer fender and the inner fender in. So what we'll do now is just take a marker of some sort and we'll mark out where we need to clean up these the epoxy primer covering from the stampings. That way we have something nice and clean to weld to. So anything will do. You can use chalk, soapstone, crayon. In this case, I'm using just a marker to go in here. And we'll just mark this out. That way we've got a nice line. We know where we've got to clean the paint off. We got to do the outside and the inside, because if we're using our spot welder, the spot welder does not like rust, paint, stuff like that. It's got to be clean contact so that it gets a good bond. Inside here, we'll be using the MIG welder. Like I say, my spot welder just doesn't have the tongs to reach in there and get a nice factory weld on there. Hey guys, so here we are. I got everything marked out on here as to where we need to grind and clean the paint away. I did use a blue marker on this. The blue was a little hard for you guys to see on camera, so I came back and I put some soapstone on here. We'll grind this paint away. That way we know that we got a good weld. So here we are. We got all the epoxy cleaned off of the inner fenders. I hate doing it because, well, there's potential for rust, bare metal, stuff like that, but we'll coat it afterwards. Seam sealer, primer, everything of the sort. So what we'll do now, we'll just try and get these fitted in here, nice and neat. Lesson learned from the driver's side is let's tack them in before we put the quarter in. I did have to do some manipulating the quarter afterwards. So we'll test fit, we'll tack it in, make sure that it's nice and set. While I was cleaning up the inner fenders, I also cleaned up the trunk pans so that we got nice, clean bond. So we'll play with that and we'll get everything fitted, tacked in, and we'll play with the quarter panel after that. So here we are. I've got the quarter panel just in place, just so that I can see what things need to be adjusted so we can make it fit a little bit better. We'll wander around here. So coming down the pillar here, it's a nice tight fit. Everything's looking like it's lining up all right here, but we'll come back right where the roof line is. We need to bring that in just a little bit. So, oh, there's my helper. Yeah, he's a big help. He likes to cuddle at the worst times. But in here, if you can see, I got a little bit of the old sitting right here. Sorry about that. A little bit of the old sitting in there. I got to grind that out so the quarter panel fits a little bit better. Once we get that ground out and cleaned up, we can get this to rest over, and we can start welding things in. Like I said, he is a big help. Not really, but he's a little bit of companionship out in the garage. So this corner in here, we got to get this all tucked in here nice and tight. So what I'll do, we'll mark where these need to be ground down. Again, right where the trunk sill is, it's not sitting quite right in here. So I'll grind that down, make sure it's tight fit. But other than that, we'll pull this quarter panel off. We'll make some adjustments, we'll put it back on. Again, the inner wheel wells are only tacked in so I can get a feel of where things need to be. Stay tuned. So here we are, guys. I got the inner fenders tacked in. Kind of placed them in here as best as I could. 2 hands, 1 camera, welder, you know how it goes. You just don't have enough hands to do it. But I'm not 100% happy with the way it fits. If you can see in here, we got a nice gap. I want that nice and tight. The 2 pans at the back here don't quite line up. So I'm gonna end up cutting these tacks out. Another one up in there. And so coming inside the car and looking where the trunk pan, the back seat pan meets the inner wheel, there's a little bit of a gap. So I'm gonna cut this out, just these little tacks, and line it up a little bit better. As you can see up in here, it just doesn't quite fit the seam. So it's all trial and error. You fit it, you cut it, you fit it, you cut it until you're happy with the fit. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut that out. We'll realign everything and see if we can get it to line up much nicer. As it is right now, The quarter panel fits on this radius quite nicely, so we don't want to move it too much, but we want to make sure it's a nice snug fit. Alright guys, so I've made a few adjustments. We've cut the welds out. Yeah, we ended up with a little bit of a gap, but we can squeeze that together, tack it back in. All the tacks are out. I've readjusted the inner wheel well, so it fits just a little bit better. So we'll squeeze this in, that brings that nice and tight. Carry on to the other side here. As you've seen before, there's a big gap down in there. Now we're nice and solid. A little bit of a gap in there, but we can squeeze that in. So up in here, we're gonna force some things around. Not really force, just make it fit a little bit nicer. So we'll tack all this stuff in. We'll try the quarter panel and make sure everything lines up. And then we'll just buzz this in. Where we can get in with the spot welder, we'll spot weld. If I can't, then we'll zap it in with the MIG welder. Well, here we are. I'm trying to fit the quarter panel in here, and so far I'm really liking what I've got going on. Everything's fitting nice and tight. If we look on the inside here, yeah, there's a little bit of a gap here, but once we pull this over and we weld it in, the rear valance should line up very nice and tight. So in here, and I've made sure that this seam right here, in between the two inner fenders, it's nice and it's all aligned so that it goes all the way across nice and smooth. Got a little bit of a gap down in here where the quarter panel meets the unibody, but we can squeeze that in, make a nice tight fit. The only thing I gotta do up in here, this little corner right here, that's what's preventing me from hitting that rear valance, make sure that it's nice and tight. Other than that, everything's fitting really well. For any of you that's done any body work, tin work with reproduction parts, you know they don't fit exact. You know you gotta cut them down and make them fit for what you need. So that's what we gotta do here. We gotta make this quarter panel fit perfectly on the side of this car. But we take one step at a time. We make sure that it fits right, snug, and proper. So guys, I'm feeling pretty confident of these inner wheel wells. We can go ahead and we can weld those in. The quarter panel fit good, other than having to trim that one little corner that was up here. It's just holding us back a little bit to squeeze this in nice and tight to that trunk valance. Once we have that nice and tight, the quarter panel can be welded in, but right now we need to get the inner fenders all welded in. I'll use my spot welder to get this edge right here, and we'll come in with the MIG. We'll touch up in here. Did a little bit of pre-drilling so we can do some plug welds, and then we'll have to clean up the quarter panel so we can get it nice and cleaned up and get some nice plug welds so that it looks somewhat factory. Alright, so we've tacked this in, some of the holes that I pre-drilled so that we can plug weld and make a nice weld. I'll show you now the spot welder. Princess Auto, great deal. It does a nice, very nice factory weld. It looks like a weld that came from Chrysler itself. Yeah, we'll show you that. So here's the little spot welder that I got. Got a 5-inch tongue on it, and that's why I say like some of the spots just aren't. I can't get to it because of the length of the tongs on it. But this little sucker, 110 volt, So it plugs into your household electrical, and so it'll give us a nice weld. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do this seam on here, staple that all nice together, and I'll show you how that's done. So we'll lift this sucker into place. It is not light whatsoever. So basically we want to come in here, I want to spot weld right there. So we put it into place, we pinch it together, and we flick a switch. Hopefully you guys seen that alright, but I don't think you did. So we'll pull this over here. There's a little weld right there. So I'm trying to keep these about 2 inches apart, and it just doesn't like that spot. There we go. Let's heat her up, melt her together. So roughly about every 2 inches, that's going to give us a nice solid spot.